Torrington City Council to order. Good evening and welcome. As always, we have Ryan Caith here from KERM, KGOS Live. It's on the radio live and it's also on YouTube. It'll be put up on YouTube. And we also have Miss Cindy Shealy here from the Torrington Telegram. This is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. This is the 12th council meeting of the year and the second council meeting in June. And I would ask Councilman Rick Patterson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Patterson. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's informational items. We have just been through a several months long budgeting process. We have had several staff budget meetings. We have had several mayor council public budget work sessions. I want to thank Councilman Shane Victorin, Dennis Kelly, Rick Patterson, and Wayne Deal for their attentive and hard work during the budget process. I want to thank all of the city department heads and their staff for all their attentive and hard work during the budget process. Airport Manager Mike Ritchie, Building and Grounds Superintendent Dennis Estes, Cottonwood Golf Course Pro David Dent, Electrical Department Head Dana Utes, Police Chief Matt Johnson, Emergency Medical Services Head Darren Yates, Torrington Fire Chief Lance Petch, Emergency Management Coordinator Chuck Kenyon, City Engineer and Director of Public Works, Jeff Harkins, Homestead Museum Head, Sarah Chairs, City Hall Maintenance, Mike Lira, Municipal Court, the Honorable John Patrick, City Court Judge, Parks and Recreation Head, Matt John, Purchasing Department Head, Kelly Matlock, Streets and Sanitation Head, Ed Hawley, Utilities Head and Deputy City Clerk, Sylvia Anaya, Deputy City Treasurer, Chris Nichols, Water and Wastewater Head, Tom Troxel, Vehicle Maintenance Head, Brian Evans, and Cemetery Sexton, Clay McCraney. And I want to especially thank City Clerk Treasurer, Mrs. Lynette Strecker, who is absolutely vital to the budget process. My sincere thank you to all of you. As I've said before, we have been blessed with a wet spring. Along with that good comes some bad. The weeds are especially abundant this year. Please keep up with the weeds to avoid a visit from the city code enforcement officers. The city provides around town special dumpsters that are for grass clippings only. Please place only grass clippings into these dumpsters. Other trash in these dumpsters makes it extremely difficult to use the grass clippings as compost. Finally, please drive with extra care. Please slow down. The kids are out of school now, and there is a huge increase in pedestrian, bicycle, and motorcycle traffic. Please be aware of the newly marked pedestrian crosswalks that are a result of the joint efforts of the local Rotary Club and the City of Torrington to mark all the crosswalks across the length of the city walking path. There is a total of 17 crossings marked with white on the roadway and signs governing traffic travel in both directions. Please acquaint yourselves with these crosswalks. As always, pedestrians have the right of way. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the June 6, 23 council meeting as published.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the consent agenda as published. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victor. Any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda as published signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. That is approved. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda itself.
Move to approve the agenda.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve the agenda for this evening. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Deal. Any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the agenda this evening signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is what we call the public forum. This is for non-agenda items. There is a time limit of 2 minutes, and the speaker must sign up before the meeting. It is a time for the council to listen. No action will be taken. And the system process for that is there's forms that anybody can place in that box there by Councilman Victorin, and I see no forms in the box. So, next item on the agenda are the action items. Item number 1 is a special event permit. Brooke Gasling of the Torrington Volunteer Fire Department Ladies Auxiliary is requesting a special event permit for a stop, drop, and run walk 5K color run to be held on July 29th, 23 from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. The applicant is requesting approval to have the special event fee waived also. Chief Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I provided an addendum to the special events permit there for your consideration. This is a Saturday morning run. I believe that we can accomplish it safely and effectively in our community. I guess it's a neat opportunity for our first 5K run that we've been able to do in Torrington related to the crosswalks that you mentioned just a few minutes ago. Because we do have those crosswalks that are signed and marked now, we can safely accommodate a run of this type where folks can go all the way down the walking path and back. We do have a small segment of this run that will take place starting at Jordan Park, going up through the city streets there and back around down on Main, where they'll catch back up on the walking path. I've chatted with the folks from Parks, Matt, John, and Dennis. Have agreed that they'll be glad to mark that with some baseball field chalk. So we've got a little bit of a running lane there on the side. And as you can see from the safety staffing, we've got some staffing lined up. We'll provide as an agency a little bit of support on that. For a Saturday morning, it shouldn't be a problem. The only potential drawback would be if we get called out for a call that requires our attention. The runners may have to pause at 28th and Main in order to get through safely. Other than that, these folks have lots of great volunteers from the fire department and should be a safe and fun event for our community. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Chief Johnson. And this is obviously a ladies auxiliary of the fire department, so they're also asking for special permit fee to be waived. That's correct?
That's my understanding. They can certainly speak to that. They're more knowledgeable on that aspect of it than I am.
Okay. And I understand one of the city's primary concerns, if not its primary concern, is safety. And as we've been talking about, we now have those crosswalks marked. And I went out and was looking at them today, and they're marked well.
Yep.
They are white as can be across the roadway, and they are fluorescent green, I think, regulating the traffic from both directions, and they're easily seen. And as I said in my informational section, I sure hope the public starts paying attention and to those, because they're all over town and they need to yield the right of way to the pedestrians. But it sounds like you can put together a safe 5K run. I'm sure it's for charity purposes. I'm getting a nod. Okay. All right.
Mayor, if it helps, one part of the instructions that we will make sure that the runners get ahead of time is that they need to be paying attention. The crosswalks are fantastic, but that doesn't mean you can jump across without looking for cars and making sure that it's safe. So we will make sure there's some instruction there so that folks are aware and paying attention to their safety.
And I think maybe on the major crossings, like on Main Street, there may be personnel there to kind of keep an eye on things.
Yes, sir. We'll have a volunteer there who's wearing a vest, keeping an eye on traffic, and then helping to activate the cross button lights so that those yellow LEDs are flashing whenever the runners need to make the cross to get onto the walking path.
Okay.
They'll be coming down the west side of the street, so they'll need to cross from west to east on Main at the crosswalk there.
Sounds like a great and safe use for the walking path. So, all right, ma'am, did you want to speak to the issue?
Not unless you guys have any questions.
Okay. Councilman Patterson?
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to commend you for
I don't even have a question, I just want, but you can go ahead.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement. I thank you for doing this. I really like these community events. I think it's good for the community. Hopefully it's good for you. I was curious about the stop-drop part of it. Is that when I try to run, then I'll probably stop and drop?
Yeah, no. Well, you can walk it all. So if you feel like you're going to stop and drop, you might as well just walk. It's okay.
But I think it's a great cause, and I think it looks like it's going to be a great event, so
Yeah, should be.
appreciate your work on it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions for anybody?
Mayor, I would move to approve and waive the permit fee.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve the special event permit as stated in the agenda and also to waive the special event permit fee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victorin. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that special event permit is approved, and that special event permit fee is waived.
Okay, thank you
Thank you,
guys.
ma'am. Council will now leave regular session, and we will open this up now as a public hearing on the 2024 fiscal year budget, and that is the fiscal year from July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024. Mrs. Lynette Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll just read a summary here real quick, which was in your agenda. So the fiscal year 2024 budget was challenging again this year. We've had an unprecedented increase in inflation and interest rates at the same time. The ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding, has been awarded to the communities, and we are now faced with getting the money spent in an environment where inflation is driving prices up 30 to 50%. Everyone in the country is competing for these same resources. All of these events have created an inflated total budget and large cash carryover balances. Most of the economic indicators are predicting a recession in our future. With that in mind, the goal in FY24 is to maintain reserve levels at the 90 days of annual operating expense target and maintain a qualified and strong workforce. So some highlights for fiscal year 2024. The total budget increased by 0.05% or $21,000 in fiscal year 24 compared to 23. It's almost exactly the same amount, which is phenomenal considering inflation. The total operating budget increased by $1 million or 4.56% compared to fiscal year 23. And I believe inflationary increases were the significant contributor to this increase. But it is $200,000 less of an increase than last year. The vehicle and equipment budget increased $712,000 in fiscal year 24, or 38%. And this was largely due to carryover of vehicle and equipment items that have not yet been received. And we do have a large purchase of a new compactor at the landfill, which is estimated at $640,000. Capital projects decreased by $1.7 million from $14.7 million to $13 million in fiscal year 24. The main contributor here is the East D Street Water and Storm Sewer Project was postponed to future years because funding, due to lack of funding, we did not receive our ARPA funding for this particular project. And this project was budgeted at $3.1 million in fiscal year 23. Water and sewer infrastructure replacement is still a significant piece of the total capital budget, coming in at $9 million. The general fund's total budget increased in fiscal year 25, $960,000 or 11% compared to fiscal year 23. So capital improvements and equipment in the general fund include the following. We had improvements at the museum. We received money from the James Kelly Trust for his collection. And we did receive that money, and we can now spend it on displaying that at the Homesteaders Museum for $829,000. Improvements to the cemetery roads, Albany Avenue Road Extension, and improvements to the golf course, which are funded by fuel tax as well as some ARPA funding. Vehicles and equipment include a new snowplow and a police patrol vehicle. We will look at utility rates in fiscal year '24. Usually we look at those around November. At that time, revenue projections will be analyzed and adjustments will be made to rates as required by ordinance. A full cost of service study for the electric fund is expected to begin in fiscal year '24 to evaluate current and future operating expenses and revenues for the electric fund. This study will annualize and separate in-town and out-of-town cost of service, as well as examine the net cost of the loss of our largest industrial power customer, Western Sugar, and combine winter and summer rates. Personnel costs increase by $671,000 or 7.2% due to a 2.5% COLA merit increase expected in January of and a merit increase also expected in January of 2024, and the final implementation of the wage study, which was completed in fiscal year '23. Health insurance costs are projected to increase 4.76%, so this is due to inflationary increase in claims. Any further increases to the health insurance costs in fiscal year '24 will be picked up by the employee contributions or plan design changes. Total cash balances for all funds for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024 are projected to be at $9.2 million. And there are a few funds falling short of their target reserve, which is the Airpoint Fund, the Golf Fund, the Swimming Pool Fund, Ambulance Fund, and Cemetery Fund. An estimated $7.4 million was taken from cash carryover to balance the budget. So the nation, the world, is continuing to struggle after the effects of the pandemic. The city has and will continue to be conservative in spending in fiscal year '24. Fortunately, our community is doing better than most when it comes to sustaining sales tax revenue and keeping businesses open. I hope this continues through the next few years, as a recession is more than likely to occur. Who knows what the future will bring? But I believe the city is in good fiscal health with a strong, dedicated workforce, which will hopefully sustain us through this uncertain economy. Also, I handed out tonight a list of equipment and projects. It just basically summarizes everything that's in the budget, so you don't have to look through every single page. So we plan on spending $2.5 million in equipment, and we're going to seek funding of $1.1 million for that. And then for projects, we have total projects, capital projects of $13 million. The average cash match for that is 27%, and the rest of that, 72.7%, will come from grants, loans, or other funding. So that's a pretty good ratio there. I'd be glad to answer any questions from the council.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for an excellent budget highlights
Thank
letter
you.
that was attached to the agenda. I really do appreciate that. And I was going to ask you, were you able to bring some copies so the press could
Yes, I
have
did hand
copies
those
of
out,
that?
so.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, do you have any questions for Mrs. Strecker? I don't see any. That was an excellent presentation.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
think you avoided having to answer questions. Thank you. At this point, I'd open the hearing up for public comments for or against the 2024 fiscal budget. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against, members of the public, the 2024 fiscal year budget? I see no takers for that. So at this point, I would go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you, Mrs. Tracker.
Thank you.
All right, council will now return to regular session. Item number 3 on the agenda is ordinance third reading, the 2024 fiscal year budget. Mr. Eddington?
An ordinance providing for the appropriation of money by the city of Torrington, Wyoming to meet its general fund requirements and obligations, to meet its enterprise fund requirements and obligations for the 2024 fiscal year commencing July 1, 2023, and fixing the sum to be raised by taxation.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. Council have any questions for either Mr. Eddington or Mrs. Tracker?
Mayor, I would make a motion to approve on third reading the fiscal 2024 budget.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve on first or third reading the 2024 fiscal year budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote on that. All those in favor of approving the 2024 fiscal year budget on third reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that ordinance is approved on third reading. Thank you. A lot of hard work went into that.
From
I
all of
think we
us.
should have some champagne.
All right.
Maybe not here.
Yeah.
Good job.
Next item on the agenda is item number 4, ordinance on second reading relating to restrictions on bar and grill licenses. Mr. Eddington?
It's an ordinance creating and enacting section 5.12.065 of the Torrington Municipal Code 2023 revisions relating to restrictions on bar and grill licenses.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. Does council have any questions for either Mr. Eddington or Chief Johnson?
Just, have there been any changes since?
No changes.
No
First
changes,
reading.
no comments, sir.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve on second reading.
Have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve on second reading. Patterson, what did I say? Kelly? Don't know my right from my left. Let me start over. I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve on second reading the ordinance relating to restrictions on bar and grill licenses. Do I have a second?
I'll give you the second.
I got a second from Councilman Kelly. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of approving on second reading the ordinance relating to restrictions on bar and grill licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that ordinance is approved on second reading. Next item on the agenda on page 2 is item number 5, ordinance on second reading relating to minors in licensed liquor establishments. Mr. Eddington?
An ordinance amending and reenacting section 5.12.025 of the Torrington Municipal Code 2023 revisions relating to minors in licensed liquor establishments.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. Mr. Chief Johnson, do you have any comments?
No changes. We haven't received any feedback on it. Something that I neglected to mention last week that I meant to was that we had emailed out a notification to all of the liquor license holders that we have an email distribution list for, and let them know about the changes, and invited them to attend if they wish to make comment or have any discussion regarding this ordinance change.
All right, thank you, Chief. Gentlemen, any questions for Chief Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the ordinance on second reading relating to minors in licensed liquor establishments.
I have a motion from Councilman Victorin to approve the ordinance on second reading relating to minors in licensed liquor establishments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor of approving ordinance on second reading relating to minors in licensed liquor establishments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, that ordinance is approved on second reading. Council will now be leaving regular session again and will now convene as a Board of Adjustment. Jeffrey Richardson is requesting a front yard setback variance from the required 85 feet from the center line of the street to 61 feet for an addition to the front of the building. So this is open for public hearing. Mr. Estes.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, Mr. Richardson's asking for a front yard setback to the old starch barn building he has purchased. He wants to put an addition on for a business he wants to put in there. It's not going to interfere with anything. I've had no public comment, and staff would recommend approval.
Mayor, I had
Go ahead.
one question, and I think I probably know the answer. Is that going to be a problem by reducing the parking in front of the business?
No, they got plenty of parking there. He will have to install a concrete handicap area as part of the construction, so, which it was not, it didn't have one before, so. Mr. Richardson is here if you'd like to speak to him.
Thank you.
And the Planning Commission reviewed this and passed it unanimously?
The Planning Commission didn't have a quorum, so we did not meet.
Okay.
The way I understand it, he wants to add 30 feet to the building?
I'm sorry?
He wants to add a 30-foot addition to the building?
Between 25 and 30, yeah.
That's going to be the same metal building that he's got?
I have not seen the construction plans.
Would you like me to speak, sir?
If you would, please.
Yeah, sure.
And Mr. Richardson, we know who you are, but would you state your name for the record, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Matthew Richardson. I'm the one who intends to put a business in here. My dad has been a gracious father to come into the city and get this set up because I work a lot of long hours. So where that second car is on the bottom of the screen, there's a concrete pad already poured off, and we just intend to do an addition there on Dennis's approval and your approval to add a little more space for our business that we want to open in there.
But is it going to be a tin facade just like it?
Yeah, we would, I actually want to repaint the building, so when we make the addition, we'd go tin and it would look just the same and match right up with it.
And do you agree with Mr. Estes that you'll still have plenty of room for parking?
Yeah, we actually, we own the lots there to the north of it as well, so we can make some parking there. But yeah, I think just the way it sits, we have plenty, but the plan is now to create a parking lot there on that north side of the building as well.
All right, Council, any more questions for Mr. Richards? I don't see any. Thank you, sir. I will ask, are there any public comments for or against this out there? I don't see any takers for that. So I will close the public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council.
And entertain a motion from council.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the setback variance.
I have a motion from Councilman Deal to approve the setback variance as set forth in the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilman Victorin. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. That's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now, council will now return to regular session again. Item number 7, which is ordinance on first reading relating to the discharge of firearms. Mr. Eddington?
An ordinance amending and reenacting section 9.24.030 of the Torrington Municipal Code 2023 revisions relating to discharge of firearms.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. Chief Johnson?
Please forgive me, I'm flipping pages here momentarily. Mayor and council, thank you. This was an ordinance that we needed to complete so that we can do a proper annexation of the Baylor facility. That includes the police firearms training range. The prior ordinance would not have matched appropriately with that range, and so we've rewritten it so that it matches appropriately for what we need and will allow for annexation of the Baylor facility without putting us in violation of municipal ordinance for police training. We've tried to move through that and look at all of the different contingencies that we might need to accomplish at the range, and also lawfully and appropriately address any other firearms-related needs that a law enforcement officer might have in our community. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilman Patterson?
Again, I make more statements than I ask questions probably, but I was curious, so I pulled up the existing ordinance, and it's pretty sparse. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it doesn't say a lot except you can't shoot in the city limits, and so this,
Yeah, and it was, there's not enough there. So we needed to clean that up and make it appropriate for what we do and make sure that we're following our own rules.
So basically, the only thing that changes is the wording for the location of the police range?
There are some other changes. I mean, I tried to be a little more descriptive on why and when a police officer or law enforcement officer might need to discharge a firearm in city limits, and make sure that that's connected to their duties or their lawful duties. We also looked at some definition on the firearm, and essentially utilized a similar definition to what the ATF uses, without some of the fluff that was unnecessary for our municipal ordinance.
Mr. Eddington, I don't recall. What's the penalty for conviction of this?
For
Is it jailable?
discharge, it's just a misdemeanor under our ordinance.
Is it jailable or not jailable?
Non-jailable. It was, I think, in response to juvenile BB gun issues a long time ago. When I first started, we had a little rash of that.
Okay. And here, in this ordinance, it defines firearm as any weapon which will or is designed to expel a projectile by the action of an explosion.
Correct.
So a BB gun wouldn't fit that definition.
If it's gas operated, it could.
If it's gas operated, but if it's just air, it's
If it's
just
air, probably not.
I think there is a BB gun ordinance, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
okay.
separate one that would address that.
I was gonna say an air rifle anymore, you can get it just a high velocity with them as you can a regular gun.
Boy, today they certainly can. You don't get to watch the BB anymore.
And the definition is specific to this ordinance.
of a firearm.
Yes, sir.
and I think it's probably important to make it clear that this is just if you're standing out there shooting in the air or something. This would not be used if someone's discharging a firearm towards someone or using a commission of a crime. Those would be dealt with
Totally
other
different
statutes. Yeah.
intent.
So
yeah.
this is just for.
Felonies to statutes.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances. Or, and this is a question that I have. I don't think we need it in here, but I just want to clear this. If someone were to use a firearm as defined here in lawful self-defense, then would they be in violation of this ordinance?
Not if it was lawful self-defense.
That's what I thought. And I also know that the prosecutor has discretion to prosecute and the officer has discretion to arrest or not arrest. So I think discretion would be applied by the law enforcement officials and the prosecutor.
Absolutely. Depend on the facts. But the intoxicated person that steps out the backyard and shoots the gun off
Right.
will be cited.
Okay. And maybe for more than just this
Yes.
violation of this ordinance.
Yes. This will be one of many.
All right. Council, do you have any further questions for either Chief Johnson or Mr. Eddington?
I guess I'm going to have to take anger management courses and not let the grackles get to me and try to shoot them with my pellet gun.
It can be tempting.
All right. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance on first reading for deal with discharge of firearms.
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the ordinance as presented on first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote. All those in favor of approving on first reading the ordinance relating to the discharge of firearms signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, the ayes have it. That ordinance is passed on, approved on first reading. Next item on the agenda, again, deals with budget matters. It's item number 8, resolution number 2023-9 to amend the 2023 fiscal year budget 10 days before the end of the fiscal year, correct? Correct. Mrs. Strecker.
I will go ahead and let Attorney Eddington read it.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Resolution 2023-9, whereas the general fund received unanticipated revenue and whereas certain budgets had expenditures in excess of the budgeted amount, whereas Wyoming state statute prohibits any officer or employee of a municipality to make any expenditure or encumbrance in excess of the total appropriation for any department. Therefore, be it resolved that the fiscal year 2023 budget of the city of Torrington be amended as follows, with a grand total budget adjustment of $214,259.97.
Thank you, Mr. Eddington. All right, now, Mrs. Strickland.
Okay, thank you. So most of these adjustments are to do with grants or money received in the middle of the year that, you know, when you do a budget, you project a whole year, and there are opportunities out there that come up that we definitely want to take advantage of. So, but most of these are that sort of thing. If it says grant or funding, those are dealing with grants. There's a few here that, you know, it is unlawful for us to appropriate or to spend more than we appropriate. So I looked through all of the budgets. Some of them were getting too close, and I was very worried that something might come through that would push it over. So I did do some adjustments and those to a few departments. Wholesale power was one of them. That is the biggest adjustment here. It's hard to predict the usage of wholesale power. We had a very hot summer last summer, and we did have a lot of usage. And I believe that is the main reason for the excess in the wholesale power increase for purchases of wholesale power. We have a lot of rec board grants here. You can see CIT grants, gov deals, which is just a minor sale of equipment. We have some overtime, gas, oil, and lube, just wasn't estimated to the usage that was used. And of course, you see here there streets, road salt, gravel, and sand. That was due to our excessive winter. So all of these need to be adjusted in order for us to finish out the fiscal year. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have anything specific.
Well, I appreciate your being as careful with this budget as you are, and this will wrap things up, so to speak, over the
Yep.
next 10 days to end this fiscal year legally and properly, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Victor, yes.
Treasurer Strecker, the Rotary Walking Path projects in an amount of $43,763, is there a reimbursement from Rotary for any of that?
Yes, and in fact, they received a rec board grant, and it was basically passed through directly to us. So we are going to spend all that money, and so that was not budgeted, so I had to adjust the budget for that, yes.
Okay.
And that was through the rec board and the Rotary applied for that?
Yes, Rotary applied for that money, and we actually got the money in advance of spending it so that we could order and get everything coming and get it spent by the end of the fiscal year. It's a great project.
Speaking of that project, those crosswalks, Chief Johnson, the lighting mechanisms, do those have a projected life?
I don't know the answer to that one. I mean, we're expecting that that's at least a 10-year project, but certainly, I mean, they're solar powered and electronic, so there is an opportunity for failure there as well.
Okay.
I just want to comment, I went and looked around town at them today. That is a great improvement as that walking path crosses the streets in town.
Yeah, it's really nice. And the other thing that we were able to do, I'm sorry, I don't mean to add too much, but we were able to get thermoplastic striping. Ed Hawley can certainly speak to that as well, but in terms of your question of how long those lights will last, one of the big concerns we had in doing that project was painting all of those crosswalks, because it would require at least annual, maybe more, repainting, which is a lot of expense for the city and a lot of ongoing work. And Bob Taylor and others made the suggestion of trying the thermoplastic, which is supposed to have a 10-year lifespan and be much more visible than regular paint. So we're really excited about the project. It came out really nicely.
And that's maintenance free, supposed to be for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Any further questions? Mrs. Strecker or Chief Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve Resolution 2023-9.
I have a motion from Councilman Victorum to approve resolution number 2023-9. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Patterson. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, the ayes have it. That resolution is approved. Thank you, Mrs. Strecker. Item number 9 is policy handbook, new policies, seeking approval of council for those new policies. Time out. I think we're okay. Mrs. Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We went over these policies in our budget work session, but just to briefly go over them again, we have 2 new policies, the Employee Assistance Program and Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964 policy. The first policy is a policy for our employees for 3 visits for a mental health issue. It could be anything from, problems with money, a divorce, anything that the employee may be going through nowadays. And it'll provide 3 sessions with a provider that we have a contract with. If the employee does not feel comfortable with that, they can go to another provider, and then we can try to negotiate the same rate. But this has been in place for several years. We just never really had a formal policy, which makes it visible to the employee that it's out there, you can use it, and we feel like this is a great addition to our employee handbook.
I understand that it wasn't that visible. Has it been used in the past very much?
It
By
has. It has. It seems like more recently it has been used more, and I think it's the whole state of the nation right now. Is there's just a lot of pressures and stress, and people are seeking help, which is great.
And I think that's good that there'll be more notice to the employees that this is
Right.
available.
So if I could add
Go ahead,
a
Councilman.
comment too, as a retired mental health and substance abuse treatment provider, I just think it's great that the city does this. It's just common sense that early intervention could save a whole lot of problems down the road. So having people be aware of this and having it available to them, I just think is an excellent benefit.
It is. It is.
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a general comment that as chair of the Wage Committee, where all of these policies and amendments came from, and being the newbie on that that committee and having to chair it, I appreciate very much the work of that committee. And the folks are right on top of things, and some very good discussions, and I think we came up with some good policies and amendments.
I will second that.
Yeah.
I'm ex officio on that committee, and I think I've missed one, but that committee does hard work and it does good work. I agree with you, Councilman Deal.
Yep. It is a very good committee. So the second policy is the Title VI Civil Rights Act 1964 policy. This is just basically a policy that says we will follow Title VI Civil Rights Act, and then it puts forth a procedure for complaints. This is required for federal grant funding, and we need to officially put it in place. So.
And I've said this before, and taking the Wage Committee, I appreciate the brevity of this. I think it covers what it needs to cover, but it is written well, and I think as few words as possible. It doesn't go on and on. And it provides a procedure if someone has a complaint, either internally with the city or the option to go to Workforce Services and deal straight with them. And that's my understanding generally where Title VI complaints go, is there's a person at Workforce Services that intakes those complaints and then they move from there. So it does provide a little bit of extra opportunity to work internally with the city procedurally. And then if the complainant is not happy, then they can always go to Workforce Services. So it gives them a couple of options. And it, as you say, Mrs. Strecker, it keeps us in line for federal grant funding and all that. We have that in place, and they look for that, right?
Yep. Very good.
Okay,
So do we need a motion to approve these? Or
yes, I would,
We would like that,
Both of them or individual?
both of them. You could move one motion together, yeah.
I
They're both
would
new.
move to approve these.
okay. I have a motion from Councilman Patterson on item number 9 to approve both of these new policies, excuse me, the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, and Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964 policy. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Councilman Deal. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving those two new policies for the policy handbook signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, those two new policies are, for the policy handbook, are approved. Next item on the agenda is item 10, policy handbook amendments. These include amendments to the policy on holidays, compensation and performance evaluation, drug testing policy, and bereavement leave. Mrs. Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll just go quickly through what's changed in these policies. For the holiday policy, we added the first paragraph on page 2, which further describes how police and ambulance personnel are paid when they work the actual holiday. So this actually is what we do when we approve payment for holidays, but this puts it in writing and makes it clearer for us to follow.
Any questions from council for Mrs. Strecker on holidays amendment? Seeing none, how about you tell us about compensation and performance evaluation amendment?
So in fiscal year '23, actually this year in November, we passed or approved a wage study which looked at our different classes of pay based on worth of work. And so this is basically updating for the passage of that wage study and its method of compensation and performance evaluation on using this study. The main changes were made on page 2 for the salary schedule. It kind of explains the worth of work, equity-based methodology that was used, and just change just a few of the wording throughout, just updating this policy. We also made some grammatical changes, minor grammatical changes, but most of the changes were made there on page 2 with the salary schedule.
All right, Councilman, any questions for Mrs. Strecker on the compensation and performance evaluation amended policy?
If there's no questions, I'll move on to the next one. The next one is the drug testing policy. The old policy was basically pretty much totally rewritten. There was a little bit of confusion between pre-employment and post-employment drug testing and the procedures that follow. So we separated them out, tried to make it more clear on what the procedures are, so that we are in compliance with the Federal Motor Carrier Act and as for CDLs, as well as pre-employment for our employees. We do have a new drug testing facility, which is local here in town, so our employees have much better access to a testing facility than they have in the past as well. So
That's good, that's local. Used to be, had to go to Scotts Bluff, didn't you?
well, they came here, they used to come here twice a month, and then it's once a month, and then sometimes not even in the month. So it just is a lot more convenient to have someone local to work with.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the other thing that it clarifies is on the last page, page 5. If a second test was requested, there was some confusion about how that would be
Yes, exactly.
handled, and we just clarified that.
Mhm.
For instance, if an employee tested positive, he could ask for a second test, and that's clarified on that
Right,
procedure?
a test, yes.
Is that a test of the original sample?
Yes,
Don't get 2 bites at the apple, right?
right.
It's a rewrite.
And I know we talked about it this morning at staff meeting, but if an employee is injured at work, then they're tested, drug and
Yes.
alcohol tested?
Yes. Or
And
if there's
also,
reasonable suspicion, an employee can be tested.
and also for CDL holders, there's
There's
the
a
federal
random
government
drug
random
pool.
program.
Yep, through Federal Motor Carrier Act, and it is, they have a clearinghouse, so everything is reported to that clearinghouse, so the whole nation can look at those if there is a violation.
Mr. Mayor, is it safe to say this isn't really randomized? It's only under certain conditions that the employee is tested?
No, the CDL holders are randomly tested.
The CDL, yes, but non-CDL.
Right, non-CDL are not.
Okay.
There is no random testing for
Right.
city employees other than the CDL, which is a federal government program for randomly testing.
That is correct. They're only tested if there's an accident or reasonable suspicion, and then pre-employment.
Any further questions for Mrs. Strecker on the drug testing policy amendment?
Okay. One last, I think this is the last one. One last policy, the bereavement policy. There's just one small change on the second page. We had a little bit of confusion on the shutdown operation. If you can see it there, essential was crossed out, and we're going to put in policy and ambulance personnel.
And that was some confusion because essential employees are defined in other policies, right?
That is correct.
And this
so-
clarifies who we really are talking about
Right.
here,
And,
which
you
is
know,
police and ambulance.
it's one of those things, you read it, and you think you understand it until it's actually put into use. That is a fairly new policy.
All right, any questions for Mrs. Strecker on the bereavement leave policy amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question on that policy, but I would like to go back to the holiday policy, if I could, for a moment.
Sure, please do.
I'm just
Sure.
on page 2 of that policy. First paragraph that you were talking about, Ms. Strecker, I can't seem to track that last sentence that says if the employee is paid holiday hours for working on the actual holiday, they cannot also be paid holiday hours for the same holiday.
For the city observed holiday. So basically, this
So if
is,
the holiday's on Friday, or I'm sorry, if the holiday's on Saturday and the city observes it on Friday,
right.
okay.
So they wouldn't get paid on Friday and Saturday. They would just get paid for one holiday.
Okay. Now I'm,
Some of the emergency personnel work on the actual holidays, so like this year, like Christmas was on Sunday or something, and they worked on Sunday, but they were off Monday, so I mean, that
So
means
they-
they wouldn't have gotten the holiday.
So Mr.
So-
Mayor, they didn't have the opportunity to get the holiday
Right.
day on the day which the city selects as the day the holiday is observed.
And it doesn't happen very often, but this year it happened quite often, and it just makes it clearer to have it all in writing.
You just don't double up on a holiday.
Right, that's just what it's saying, you don't
Okay.
double up.
okay, I'm tracking you now.
Thank you. Good question.
All right, gentlemen, are there any further questions for Mrs. Strecker on any of these 4 policy handbook amendments that we've been discussing? And Mr. Eddington, again, we can, on one motion, take care of these 4 amendments.
You can unless you choose to do them separately or pull one out and do the other 3 or any combination thereof.
Okay. With that instruction, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve all four.
I have a motion from Councilman Patterson to approve all four of those policy handbook amendments, A through D. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victorin. Do I have any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I would call for a vote on that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays, those policy handbook amendments are approved, A through D. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the bills from 6/7 of '23 to 6/20 of '23. Mrs. Strecker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So attached to your agenda were a list of bills, and then handed out tonight was another set of bills. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Deal.
as I have a mileage reimbursement in these bills, I am going to abstain from voting on this issue.
Okay.
One of the things they pointed out at the WAM conference is if we should not vote on a reimbursement to us.
What? But hang on a second.
I had,
So de minimis,
But
and it's documented. You're certainly free to do that, but I totally disagree with it.
and just, here's what I would like to say.
I'm not advocating.
I didn't understand what they said up there. My understanding was on these regular type of things, mileage reimbursement, those sorts of things that happen in regular course of the year, you don't need to poll and not vote. It's if, say, you have a business, I
Exactly.
manufacture widgets, and
That's
I
the way
sell
I understand it as well.
widgets to the city of Torrington for a certain amount, then I should abstain
Totally different
from,
situation.
from that.
This you're actually doing in your official capacity, and so, I mean, I think you can vote on that.
Mr. Mayor, I had the same concern at the first WAM conference, and the staff indicated to me that we have a policy about reimbursement for mileage
Right.
that covers approval of it.
That's a good point.
I certainly understand the sentiment.
When I
Mr.
did,
Mayor, I just want to make sure I'm being entirely ethical here, but given the explanation, I will abstain from abstaining.
Well, I appreciate that, and Frank, I'll tell you what, these guys were listening, okay?
That's good.
And I, just for the record, the legislature passed a statute where we all have to be trained in certain fiscal aspects of public government and open meetings laws and all that stuff that goes with the job. So that was a good educational discussion, so. But I agree with you, Mr. Eddington. If it's regular course of business, then we don't need to abstain. If it's a particular contract, and I'm a businessman out there, and I'm the council or mayor, and I do business with the city, then I need to abstain from voting on that.
I think so.
that's what I did years ago when I had my business.
Right.
Right, so, we had some bills that came up for Dennis Kelly's business, and the same thing would probably be for Z&W, I imagine, so.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple questions on the first set of bills.
Okay?
First one would be on page 1, and that's for AET Inc., parts and labor to repair blower building. Just curious what the blower building is.
That's it's the sewer, building where the sewer, I don't
It's out
know.
at the lift station, where just so it's got the blowers and it blows the air into the various lagoons.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thank you.
The next question is on the Wagon Tails Shelter, page 9. An estate payment for $6,500.
Yes. So that was a payment from an estate. I don't know if maybe Chief can help me with that one.
We handled a host of animals for a person who was deceased, and we maintained them for an extended period of time. Ms. Terry at the shelter utilized shelter funds to pay for medical treatments for those animals. There was a settlement that was reached in a judgment, and the estate was ordered to pay for the services that were provided to the animals through Wagon Tail Shelter. And so that's being reimbursed to Wagon Tail's Shelter in accordance with the judgment from the court.
We actually had to sue the estate.
Okay.
So that's not city funds, it's money that was
It's not,
collected.
it's estate funds. It's just, the check was made to the city of
Pass
Torrington. Yeah.
So it's just passing it through to the Wagon Tails.
If no further questions, I'll move to approve the bills as presented.
I have a motion from Councilman Kelly to approve the bills as presented in item 11. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Victor. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, I'd call for a vote on approval of the bills as presented in item 11. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Hearing no nays. Item 11, approval of the bills from 6/7/23 to 6/20/23 is approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. And we have a public comment from Chief Johnson.
Ms. Lynette, would you mind coming up here with me for just a minute? Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to take a minute, actually a bunch of us wanted to take a minute and say thank you to Ms. Lynette for the work that she's put in, and just acknowledge the efforts. A group of us chipped in to provide a tangible thank you. The ladies at the flower shop did an awesome job, but this is really heavy, so I'm gonna hold it for another minute, and we may need to get a Sherpa for Ms. Lynette to get it back to her office.
Okay.
But I don't know that any of us can fully appreciate the amount of work that she puts into this. There's not a night that I don't get out of here late, or that somebody doesn't get out of here at 6, 6:30, 7 p.m., and Ms. Lynette is still sitting at her desk working her tail off to make the budget happen. And yet she's miraculously still one of the first ones here every morning. And she sinks her heart and soul into her job so that our community can function. And it's just worth a thank you. And so we're really grateful for Ms. Lynette.
Thank you.
That is very well said. You're gonna make her cry. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, guys. That's really nice.
All right. Fire Chief Patch. You stick out like a sore thumb back there with that green shirt.
And you know, Chief Johnson, you are putting the pressure on Lynette's husband
Not my intention.
Mayor, Council, good evening. So this last weekend was convention at Riverton. We had 2 teams participating. We had one team that finished in 5th place, and the second team finished in 7th out of 8 teams. Next year, the competition will be in Afton, and then the following year after that, it'll be here in Torrington. So
26 conventions here.
25.
25.
Yeah. So I think they had fun. Past Chief Estes was up there. I think he would agree with me maybe in this comment that the teams seem to have more bad luck than they had any luck at all. They just, unfortunate they had some penalties, and that's kind of was their downfall, I would say. I don't know. Would you agree, Dennis? So,
How many teams were there?
8. I believe 2 from Afton, 1 from Riverton, 1 from Lander, Newcastle, 2 from Torrington, and 1 from Wheatland. So, but
So that's kind of gotten smaller over the years too then, huh?
yes, I think back in the day used to have 15, 16. I mean, I know Lusk used to have a team, and Lingle used to have a team, and
Well, Torrington used to have
Couple.
city and rural and
mhm,
everything.
yep. So
It's just going through a period where there's less interest than there once was? Or?
I think some of it can just ebb and flow of everything. You know, you get some of the older generation or some of the older firefighters kind of get out, and some of the younger people come in and maybe don't understand or know what it's about, and so the interest kind of dies down, and then get the fire again. I know we were, I think, 4 years maybe without a team, and then some people thought it might be fun to do it again, and so now we're kind of back in the thick of it with everything and going from there.
Well, I mean, it's good training, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of the stuff they do is real well. You know, we don't jump off moving trucks anymore, that stuff, but otherwise it does really good. And then there's, you know, some meetings. The State Chiefs Association has a meeting up there, and so they get some business and some work done as well. So it's a good function. It's great.
Good. Has it been fairly quiet on the calls?
So far, obviously a lot of rain, so not much for grass fire season, which doesn't really pertain to the city that much, but most of what we're running right now is just smell of gas or smoke detectors going off from people cooking or something like that. So, but that can change at any minute. I mean, it could change and get real busy real quick. So,
Well, as you mentioned in the staff meeting this morning, because we're on the radio, people need to contact you, the dispatch or something, for controlled burns.
Yes.
Because often they don't, and then some citizen sees 24-foot high flames and calls the fire department.
yeah, we just ask if you're going to do a control burn to please just call the dispatch and let them know. They're going to ask for an address, how long that you think it'll take, and then when you're finished, call dispatch again, and they can take it off the board. And then if there's a call out there or a call in a certain location, they can look and say, well, there's a controlled burn in that area. We can check it before we page fire and EMS out to show up.
So that's a great idea. If those engaged in controlled burns notify dispatch.
Mhm. And check the weather before you do it. So that's always a good one. So
All right. Any questions for the fire chief?
all right, thank you guys.
Thank you. All right. Anybody out there?
Yes, I have, I wanted to report to you guys on the purchase of the 1-ton truck.
Thank you.
We did enter into contract with Fremont Motors out of Sheridan for a Ford F-350 Super Duty truck with utility box. It's going to be delivered around August 31st. The total amount is $68,325. So, are there any questions?
What was the name of that dealer?
Fremont Motors out of Sheridan. There's
Sheridan.
several around the state. There's one in Lander. I'm not sure where else, but I know there's one in Lander and Sheridan
And Riverton.
and Riverton.
And Scottsbluff.
No,
No.
not in Scottsbluff anymore.
Not anymore.
They say this one in Scottsbluff is not there.
They were sold.
Oh, okay.
But we did, get several quotes. We got 9 quotes here. So,
Is that delivered price or we gotta go get it?
nope, it's delivered.
Good.
And it should be delivered in August.
End of August, it said August 31st, so.
All right, well, thank you for that update. Did council have any questions for Mrs. Strecker on the 1-ton pickup? No. I just want to say again, thank you, council, department heads, especially you, Mrs. Strecker, for...
I can't do it without all of you, so.
Well, we can't do it without you either, so it's a symbiotic relationship. A lot of thought went into this, a lot of work, a lot of holding everybody accountable for numbers and all of that, and I appreciate this process, so it was a learning experience for me.
Means a lot. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, Mr. Mayor, that it was definitely a learning process for me, being one of the new guys on the council, and felt like I was jumping off the boat without a life jacket at first, but I learned how to swim a little later on. Still learning, and I appreciate everybody's insight and help along the way.
And I'd just like to mention that our next regularly scheduled council meeting should be July 4th. But since we're not going to be on the 4th, it'll be on the 5th, correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Thank you.
And that's a Wednesday, the 5th?
Yes.
Wednesday, the 5th.
Yes, next council meeting, Wednesday, the 5th.
Unless we get double time.
Two meetings on two consecutive days. All right. Any further public comment? Seeing no takers, we have completed this agenda this evening, gentlemen, and this meeting is adjourned.